Greetings, webheads, and welcome to episode 12 of Witty Banter, yet another Marvel Crisis Protocol podcast. I'm Patrick.
I'm Alex.
I'm David.
Miles Davis.
We are here to help you get better at and have more fun with your Crisis Protocol. We have a little business to attend to before we get into the main topic today. The business specifically is to announce the winner of our latest giveaway. David, what are we giving away? What can our lucky winner be expecting?
Isn't it Spider Gwenum and Scar Spider?
That was last month.
Yep.
Well, then what is this one? Is this?
I think
Shang-Chi.
Oh,
box
okay,
that
Shang-Chi.
Been, like brewing over for the last month and a half.
Yep.
Oh yeah, okay. Shang-Chi and Sable.
Yep.
Okay.
So our winner this time is Alistair Glenn. So Alistair, congratulations. We will be reaching out to you to get you your prize. We will be having another giveaway come episode 14. Alex, can you remind the webheads how you can be involved with winning these fabulous prizes?
Give us reviews on the social media of your choice. That'll get you one entry. Join the Patreon. The Itsy Bitsy Spider gets you one entry. And the
Spider Friend.
friendly... What's the second one, Patrick? I'm sorry, I can never remember.
Spider Friend.
Spider Friend. That one gets you two entries.
Yep.
So you can get a total of 3 entries and better chances of winning a prize.
Absolutely. So leave us a rating and a review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. That gets you an entry. And then come join us in the Patreon, patreon.com/wittybantercast. Not only do you get entries for our giveaway, but you also get primary dojoing of rosters. You also get access to our special bonus episodes. You also get priority emails answered. In addition to helping us, supporting us for what we're doing and keep our lights on. So please reach out. Please give us a rating and review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Please support us at patreon.com/wittybantercast. So business over. Now what we are looking for, what we're going to be doing is diving into our primary topic for today. We are starting a semi-regular series called How Do You Deal With? And the idea is exactly what it sounds like. We've all, in getting ready for playing a game, maybe not all, at least I have in getting ready for a game, just kind of had an exasperated sigh and saying, ugh, how do I deal with, for today's case, kaijus? But we're going to be discussing other stuff, other areas, other topics that are challenging. And what we hope to do is to give you some thoughts, give you some strategies to help you so that the next time you see that across the table, you have a little more tools in your toolbox to be able to address it. So today we're talking about how to deal with a kaiju. JP, what's a kaiju?
It's a big, ugly, nasty thing that I put on the table a lot.
There
People
is a
cry
reason
about.
there is a reason I ask you. So does anybody else kind of want to dive in and give a feedback on kaijus?
I mean, go ahead, go on,
I
start.
was gonna say you guys all love them. That's what they're gonna say.
Yeah, I love them. The whole whopping half of one I play called Juggernaut. Yeah.
No, I'm saying you love mine. You don't love yours.
Oh, I don't play him, so there's nothing to love. But I don't have a problem myself with kaijus that much, other than, oh yeah, I love getting thrown 4 times in a fucking turn.
It's still sad for me as a Sentinels player that the tallest models in the game are not kaijus because they're just so not. terrible to be facing off against. So basically, what a kaiju is a big, nasty, high threat model that's difficult to deal with and, sorry to break it to you, JP, unpleasant as an experience to play against. Which is why it's an obvious first topic for how do you deal with it?
Sorry, Tom.
So I think we're going to start out with the 3 kaijus that are really roaming around out there, terrifying Marvel Crisis Protocol players: Hulk, Immortal Hulk, and Thanos. So who do you guys want to start with? Where should we begin our conversations?
Maybe
We
we
just
talk
put on the
about
list. Hulk,
Yeah.
Hulk, Hulk. They're similar, but different.
Okay.
But there's some overlap there.
Well, let's start with Hulk then. So what makes Hulk so effective? What makes him such a monster to deal with? Why when you put Hulk down does somebody else worry? What is it about Hulk that causes the most problems?
Well,
he's fairly mobile. He can throw dice, and it's difficult to displace Hulk. And when you do, I mean, he just probably leaps back, and it's fine. Like,
yeah, the way I was thinking of summing it up is Hulk can do just about everything. He's got a push on his builder. He can throw with his spender. He has a throw superpower. He has a place. The only thing he can't do is mystic attacks, and I think that's it. I think
He's not.
he can do just about everything in the game.
His range isn't very good, but
He's got the beam 3, but then also on top of it, the place kind of helps out with his range problems too.
for sure, the beam is kind of one of those attacks that comes up sometimes. But
Yeah, it's a very niche situation.
you definitely want to have damage on him when you're beaming.
I was just about to say
You don't
it's
just
probably,
want to throw 5 dice beams with him. That's kind of shit.
yeah, it's probably once you've got about 15 points of damage and you're adding those dice on, it probably makes the beam a little saltier.
Yeah, I mean, it starts getting pretty juicy when you're starting to add like 3 dice to it.
So
well, and you can always with either of the Hulks. There's always smash too, right?
You
So-
can. I value Smash a little less with Hulk because he can throw terrain. That being said, I usually use his throw to throw characters, but some, like, compared to say something like Sentinel Prime or Malekith, who doesn't have a superpower throw, I do value the Smash a little more on that, just because like they don't have anything else to do with the building next to him. I guess the exception would be iHulk with Siege of Darkness. Like, you get a lot of value smashing a size 3 and then attacking 3 times, essentially adding 9 dice.
That's
So
it's quite good.
JP, you're, for lack of a better term, resident Hulk expert. So when you're looking to put Hulk in a roster, or when you're making plans, what's going through your head when is Hulk something you're building around? Is Hulk something you put in with something else, or what are your thought processes when you're starting work on a Hulk included list?
nothing goes through my head. It's a completely brain dead pick.
Yeah, I keep hearing that.
So Hulk's probably, he's got to be my favorite kaiju. He's just so good, and for 6 points, it never feels like he's bad. And I just think he's superior to iHulk in every list except Midnight Suns right now. Anyway, until someone changes my mind. Like David was saying, Hulk just, like, he kind of just, well, Alex was saying it too. He just does everything. And he's kind of, he's kind of a puzzle to play against for a lot of teams, because you don't really want to put damage on him, especially
No.
like a marginal to like moderate amount of damage, because then he's like really in his zone adding ice when he's not really that in danger of getting one shot in an activation. So usually I'm kind of getting off topic from your question, but usually you either want to like ignore Hulk or burn his ass down. What goes through my mind when I'm building a Hulk roster is usually I have an angle to take the list kind of tall, or stack multiple like size 4 people, or he's affiliated. Like anytime Hulk's affiliated with an affiliation, he's just good, right? Um,
And
he's
and it,
he's great in Avengers, either like Steve or Sam. Um, he's good in Defenders, and what else is he in? Is that it?
I think that's it.
Yeah, but he's also good when you're just stacking stuff. Like he's good in Brotherhood. You can just stack him with Juggernaut and just have double size 4 dudes running around.
is him being good in affiliations just because it gives you more flexibility with your splashes?
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
he's just like an S tier kaiju, and then you can splash whatever you want on top of that. It's just kind of stupid. Oh, I like him in Guardians too. He's an awesome in Guardians.
So if you're bringing Hulk, or if you're facing off against Hulk, is that something where you're expecting to see him just kind of jump right in your face? Is it something he's gonna sit in the middle and hold something off, or where would you expect to see Hulk be going on the board to try to plan against it?
I don't think you throw Hulk into somebody's face. I think that's a bad way to play him, but well, I'm sure there's a lot of people who play him aggressively and do get some work out of him, but 20 health goes fast, especially when you don't have a day's break point where they can just stack damage or overkill.
And when you don't have Steve to help with Witty Banter.
Yeah, I mean that definitely helps. When he's getting damage piled on him, like he can usually puny banner quite a bit anyway, but reducing it by 1
He
definitely
can't,
helps.
but I mean, once you get to the point where you're throwing, leaping, spender, it's getting to the point where your power is going away very quickly. So if you're getting to the point where you're at less than 4 power, you're not going to be able to puny banner every attack.
Sure, but like you usually respond to a big attack with a lot of successes with a puny banner, so you're taking damage anyway. So when you spend 4 to puny banner, you're probably not negating all that damage. You're going to take additional damage. It's going to be able to
Fair.
help pay for future puny banners. But like, I
That's fair.
mean, reducing by 25% with Steve is not nothing. It's pretty significant. I think with Hulk, you want to play him more cagey, but still impactful. He can do a lot of stuff. I think you also want to probably bring a little insurance for him with your tactics cards and/or other models. Like if you can get some sort of bodyguard for him, or I mean, it's not necessary, but it does help preserve him. Or cards like fallback or recalibration matrix or something helps to prevent double attacks or spikes or whatever.
Sacrifice too, right?
Sacrifice, yeah, anything like that. I mean, he functions completely fine independently, but if you're trying to keep him around longer, if someone really commits to burning him down with the right team, he can just kind of combust quickly.
Do you think of Hulk as primarily an attrition piece? Is he a scoring piece, or how do you conceptualize what you're trying to do with Hulk?
He is definitely a control piece. He has the best throw in the game. And he's got pushes on his builders, and he's got a stagger on his spender. So he has a
And
lot
the
of control.
throw. The
Sure.
throws too.
Yeah. But like just having a stagger gives you a lot of control in the damage area. I mean, the throw is great too. It's unlimited size. It's insane, but I'm just pointing out like the different facets that he has of control. But my God, if you poke the bear and he doesn't go into hibernation, that dude is an attrition monster. He will fuck your world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks when you leave a Hulk on 1 health.
It's like the worst. That's the worst case scenario right there.
Yeah.
When he has
So-
16 to 19 damage on him, he is terrifying.
So Hulk is the definition of if you come at the king, you best not miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so let's talk for people who've had if you've had lots of experience, or what have you done effectively to counter a Hulk? I mean, obviously one answer is have your own Hulk, but if we're not doing that, if it's a non-kaiju versus kaiju match and you're the non-kaiju, if it's Hulk, what are your primary strategies, or is that answer dependent on what you are running and what you are trying to do?
I mean, it's a little dependent on what you're trying to do. Like, I think you have to be able to identify, like, is this a crisis where Hulk can hold multiple extracts? Like, if it's cubes or hammers or something. Or if there's, like, a lot of secures. It's hard for Hulk can't be everywhere at once, right? So, like, if you're just letting him score 1 point by where he's standing on and maybe just having a plan to keep extracts off of him, then that can work.
So that and that's probably one counter for kaijus in general is have a crisis setup where you can spread your victory point scoring out to the point where Hulk can be a big bad monster, but he can only get X amount of points, and the rest of your team can go get more.
Yeah.
So part of that planning is at roster building when you're putting your crisis together to sort of have like your anti-kaiju crisis selection. That's something that's either going wider or going more points or going where one model really can't score a whole bunch.
I mean, I don't think there's a world where Hulk's not holding an extract, unless it's researcher.
Yeah, let's
You
research.
just have to plan on Hulk scoring an extract
Yeah.
point around, and then maybe a secure
Yeah.
point
Right.
at minimum.
Right. But there's a difference between holding one extract and holding 3 extracts.
Sure. But if he's holding one and on the point, he's scoring 2.
Right. Right. Um other than the the cubes and the hammers, the one where you can accumulate, are there any other extracts that Hulk is particularly better at, or that are particularly more effective against Hulk?
He can definitely bully a researcher.
Right.
He definitely he can do that real well.
So how about some of the others like Skrulls or Virus or Montesi or Spider Infected, stuff like that? Is it just kind of a general rule that the more single extracts that are out there, the less Hulk likes that?
Mm, I don't know if that's true.
I don't think if it's the less he likes it. I think it just depends on what your team is trying to do. Like if your team is trying to score and close the game out, then you want to have those extracts that he can only hold one of, and that there's a lot of them, right?
And that's obviously in general with kaiju one of the counter options is just have a team that can go score a whole bunch of points in time, and as effective as Hulk is, if you win the game in round 3, he's only got so many activations.
Well, and he's only one model, right? I mean, sometimes you have to accept that Hulk is going to do Hulk things
Mhm.
and kill stuff and wreck shop. Sometimes that's just how it goes.
Sometimes 7 dice attacks are good, and sometimes 7 dice attacks are bad.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of it's crisis selection, some of it is kind of your strategy for a game. So if you're more of a score team, you just want to push the game as much as possible into a scoring scenario so you minimize Hulk's opportunity. What do you do if
I think there's some nuance there. Like
okay?
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
there's just a like say I have Avengers and I'm 5 wide with Hulk, like I'm can definitely play scenario just fine.
Mhm.
If I'm putting together a kaiju team that's like what would typically be considered kaiju is like double kaiju with something else, like three tall. At that point, yeah, going for a bunch of extracts single holds is really good. But like say for instance Brotherhood, they bring Mystique, Hulk, Juggernaut, Toad, and a 3 on Senators, which is 6 wide extract, and that's their pick. They pick Senators,
Mhm.
and they're bringing 2 Kaiju's into it. So it's not always the case that it's good against Kaiju's, but it definitely helps prevent your opponent from just stacking super tall and beating the shit out of you because they have a shorter clock if you have more extracts on the board. If they go like 5 wide, I don't know if it's as impactful to take like wide extracts. I mean, it's still good. It's still just putting more points into the game. If their objective is to beat you down and you're trying to score, then put more points on the board and the game ends faster. But it can vary in its effectiveness.
Well, and like if you are that scoring type team, these are the kind of things you consider bringing characters that have steals on, right? So you can take them off of Hulk. So
Yeah.
like your cat, Isles, Spider Woman, anybody who has an extract steal.
So basically, just play webs.
Yeah, basically.
This probably holds true for the others as well, but are characters that can hand out dagger more valuable against kaijus like Hulk?
Oh yeah,
I mean, obviously,
Mhm.
and he can
because
just yeah.
you're having the activation of a character that is essentially worth 2 models.
So you're almost, for lack of a better term, whatever. If you're costing an activation, it's you're sort of doubling up almost.
Yeah, you're negating essentially like 3 threat
Mhm.
of an activation
Yeah.
with one action of yours. So you're like getting very good value out of your single action. Say like a cat into a Hulk staggering, like she's worth 3 threat, Hulk's worth 6. You're taking away half his activation, and you've only used half your activation of cat. You have another action, and it scales from there. Like I Hulk 7 threat, Thanos 8 threat. So yeah, stagger's real good. So is shock. All the kaiju hate shock,
Shocker.
and none of them are immune to it.
There's
Well,
very few models immune to shock. I think there's like 2 or 3 in the game. There's not too many.
Yeah,
Is it
kaijus just don't like conditions in general, right? Like, because like
bleeding's
if you
super
bleed
annoying.
Hulk like early, like that's gonna he doesn't have a way to like because a lot of characters will daze and then they'll remove their conditions, but like
right?
with Hulk, you can't. So that bleed is stacking every time.
You got to be careful with bleed in that situation though, because like JP had said earlier, you either ignore him or you try to kill him as quickly as possible, so that way he doesn't hit you with 10 dice builders. Uh so the bleed chip damage does eventually stack up, and that unless you plan on killing him, I don't think that's the greatest of ideas.
And
I
and Hulk,
agree. I agree there.
yeah, and Hulk's kind of unique about that because every 4 points of damage he takes, he gets an extra die on his attack. So you really, particularly with him, really do have to pick a lane. Either you're just going to all ignore him and let him go, or you're going to commit to the bit and burn him down. You really can't go halfway.
No, I typically, when I play against Hulks, depending on my roster, I just straight up ignore him. Or, if I take lucky pot shots at him, depending on how well those random attacks do, that could flip what I choose to do. But for the most part, I just ignore the bastard and try to control the best I can.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Conditions kind of are they're split into two camps, kind of. So like, there's ones that you want to ignore them, and ones that you want to burn them down. So like, bleed and incinerate are good if you want to just kill them. And if you want to ignore them, you just like throw shocks, daggers, and roots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you're lucky enough to get a judgment out there, that doesn't hurt.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Hex,
that will
Hex
happen.
is a good one
You
too.
can to stun. Oh yeah, Hulk does have Hex. Hex is actually good either way.
Yeah,
Hex is
Yeah.
Hex is great.
but
That
there's like
falls in both
6
camps.
ways to give Hex. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, more than stun, or more than judgment.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's true. No.
Is it kind of seems like Iron Fist with the Iron Fist being able to just plop an activation token down does seem like he'd be a useful tool with kaijus. Is that kind of a trap to be thinking about, or like do you push Iron Fist? Do you maybe, if you're on the fence about something, do you consider him, or do you just not let that fall into your thought process at all when you're building a roster?
personally, I really like Iron Fist. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he is. He's one of my favorite 3-threat splashes in the game. Not only because of the Iron Fist, but he's also got Heroes for Hire, which is a fantastic card. But like Heroes for Hire, the Heroes for Hire is any size throw, right? Or is it size 3?
No, it's size 3.
Size 3.
Is it size 3? Okay. Well, Heroes for Hire is still a fantastic card because then he'll more than likely get dazed, so that way he has enough power for the next turn to just Iron Fist Hulk. And I think that activated token is super awesome. But then again, also it's not even a matter of worrying about it for the activation token. If you're not gonna have priority, an Iron Fist in the Hulk is still worth it because then he'll get a stagger.
Mhm.
So your Iron Fist question specifically, I think, is kind of nuanced. Like, I think Black Cat, like, you can kind of plug and play Black Cat in any list. I don't think Iron
Yeah.
Fist is good enough to just like plug into lists. I think he's
Mhm.
probably just reserved for affiliated teams. And I think it's also too important to stack your kaiju threats, or your threats against kaijus. I don't think you can just bring Iron Fist and be like, okay, I have Iron Fist. Because when you just bring Iron Fist, he becomes the target because he's
Yeah.
going to take away an activation. But when you bring Iron Fist with Cat, now suddenly you have two people who can start ruining days.
Yeah.
Or
So
like
what you're saying
Cat,
is
anybody who can stagger, like Cat and Kingpin
Mhm.
for like criminals.
so what you're saying is just play Midnight Suns because they're both affiliated in Midnight Suns.
Yeah, you could do that.
No,
Plus,
I'm
plus,
kidding.
plus, you could bring an eye Hulk.
You could splash.
Yeah,
You could
you get
splash
an
another
Hulk
one
too.
too. You can bring Iron Fist, Cat, and some other person who staggers.
Mysterio for the win.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go.
My favorite character.
It stops
Bill's also
Witty
pretty
Banter.
good into Hulk too.
Yeah.
And Bill's somebody that gets splashed a lot too.
And he's real good in Midnight Suns.
Yeah.
He's real good in Midnight Suns.
As opposed
Where's
to
he not good?
as opposed to all the other places where he's not good. Exactly.
Let me say why he's good. It's because he's an eyes on the prize for free. You move
Yes.
medium, you bump to the middle line, you snatch the extract, and then you move back. Same play as eyes on the prize, but you save yourself a Texas card, which is pretty freaking good.
It's not
And you
terrible.
still have a bill.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other thoughts about Hulk specifically? I mean, there's some. I mean, there's some broader concepts that I think are going to take hold for anybody, which is if you see something like that, you kind of have to choose between either ignoring them or deleting them. I think that's probably going to be true either way. Any other specific thoughts about Hulk before we move on to his higher threat and slightly scarier brother?
I would say one of the things Pat Dunford used to talk about was to bring like to give Hulk a chew toy, like a
Yep.
character that he can just play around with, like somebody like a Luke Cage
Mhm.
or maybe a Taskmaster or something like that. He has to like he either has to like deal with or move away from, and that's like when you can get like a 3 threat that can do that, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then yeah, like we just talked about, like try to control. I personally think you should try to control them as much as possible. It's easier said than done since there's a lot less unrestricted throws and pushes. But if you have them, take them. Like when I play Juggernaut, I do not throw Hulk into things. I throw him as far away as possible.
Given how much mobility Hulk has, is that how effective is that? I mean, I know you're taking away some of his other activations, but just because he can get around, is Hulk a model that you can really effectively control?
You got to have
I
more than one thing, obviously. Like
Oh, for sure.
if you're just short pushing him, then you're not really accomplishing anything.
Yeah, that's almost a waste of time. But when it comes to like the control that I've been doing and using recently is hit him with conditions and throw him or push him with better options. Like the short play or the short pushes, those are irrelevant. I ignored those. Those aren't even worth it. Um, yeah, just I try to control him as much as possible. There's in my opinion no point in really attacking him unless you just go all out.
Is that kind of true with controlling too? Because if you've got to kind of stack throws on top of throws, do you have to kind of? It sounds like you kind of have to do the same thing with a control to be able to get him to the point where it actually is affecting his action economy.
A medium throw is kind of a stagger on Hulk
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty good.
because he can gamma leap back, but he's still not where he was. I mean, even a short throw is farther than a range 2 place, but it's pretty close. So like if he's on the edge of a secure, say, and you throw him directly away, like on the side that he's on, I'm not explaining it very well, but if you throw him short, if he hops back, he won't be on the secure because the range 2 is shorter than the short throw. So if they've measured out exactly range 1 to place Hulk on the secure, you can actually displace him with a short push or throw where he can't counteract with a range 2 place gamma leap. But if you're throwing medium, like that pretty much, I mean, unless he's like base to base with the character, he's probably gonna have to use a move to like even attack anybody. I mean that depends on board state too. It's assuming that you're throwing him into a place where there's nobody, like out to the side or something. But range or medium throw is like objectively just really good against any kaiju.
Yeah.
yeah. The only
Okay.
one that I don't think is good against is Malekith, just because he's got ferocity.
Yeah, it makes it kind of tough when Malekith can ferocity medium.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It does make him burn power, though. Malekith likes having power for those skulls. If you can tax Malekith's power, and that's going to really depend on the game. But sometimes Malekith, like my game against Travis the other night, I spendered his Rhino with Malekith, and I had like the most dog shit roll on 10 dice. It was like 2 or 3 successes. But then I had double skull, so I crit those skulls with my last 2 power and like managed to just kill Rhino. But then Rhino dropped the 2 hammers he was holding, and I couldn't pick him up because I had no power because I had to spend it on the skulls. So Malekith definitely wants a lot of power, depending on how bad you roll or good, I guess. I mean, you want to see skulls with Malekith, but if you roll a lot of skulls, it's ending up taxing his power economy greatly, especially if you're doing it on a spender, which is not ideal. Typically, if you're playing Malekith, and this isn't really the podcast for playing the kaiju, but usually when you're playing Malekith, you want to be critting those skulls on a builder, ideally. Usually the spender I save for either if I really just need a bigger dice pool and I have a lot of power, or I need to like move Malekith to a different spot because he places range 1 after I can't remember what the sequence is. It's during or after the attack.
I think
Can't
it's
remember.
after.
Is it after? I think it's after too.
Yeah, it's after.
I don't use it too much, but it's helpful. It's a good tool in the bag. 10 dice for 4 power is pretty stupid.
And it does conditions too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does conditions on wilds. I mean, I really hate that. I wish it just had like Pierce or something. I don't know. It feels bad to like do a Malekith spender and the guy's still living to
Yeah,
get the
it does.
conditions. I'm like, I'd rather you're just dead.
Well, I think we have an open conversation at some point about how kaiju-y Malekith is at this point. It's certainly in comparison to some of the other characters that we're going to talk about. Let's talk about Immortal Hulk. How is he similar to Hulk? How is he different than Hulk? I mean, apart from they're both green, that's not helpful.
I mean, their kits are very similar. They both have Gamma Leap. They both have almost the same throw, but Ihulk's is 1 more power. But he loses the don't like me when I'm angry or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
putting damage on him,
Yeah.
putting damage on him isn't detrimental to your health, aside from him just being able to like drop a spender or something, which is pretty good too. His spender is pretty amazing.
It's pretty good.
But
He has more mystic defense,
yeah, he does.
and he gains. Isn't he immune to hex?
He is.
He is immune to hex.
Yeah.
He's immune to hex and hex, poison, and stun. OG Hulk's immune to stun and poison. Stun would be a great solution for kaijus, but most of them are immune to it.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say most, but a decent amount. Well, almost all of them, right? CGR is the only one that we have on the list tonight. Oh, and I guess
think so, yeah.
some of the smaller ones like Ultron Rhino we might get to, but yeah, Hex immune to Hex is pretty good. It doesn't come up a lot because there's not that many characters who have it, but man, it really fucking hurts when OG Hulk gets hexed. It makes you real sad.
Yes.
Real sad.
Yeah.
But I think Hulk is another one where you are even more incentivized to ignore than OG Hulk. Just because if you don't have a plan to kill Hulk once he flips, you just wasted all your effort. Especially if they build toward it, like if they bring patch up or something.
Patch up. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've had opponents that just went into Hulk and like burned him down to 15 health real quick, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. I just bring him back to take off the green door token, and it's like you put so many resources in trying to kill him that kind of cost you the game. So I think you really need a specific plan in Hulk, or just ignore him and hope that he doesn't roll good.
So I guess that's what we're here for. So what is that? What does that plan look like? It maybe just for listeners who might not be quite as familiar with Hulk and kind of the wonky immortality mechanic. Just summarize real briefly how that works. Let's make sure that everybody's on the same page before we start talking about how to counter it.
So instead of dazing, he will gain he does daze, but he gains instead of flipping his card, he gains an immortality token. And the immortality token allows him to heal 1 point of damage at the end of every turn. And once he has 0 damage on him, he removes the immortality token.
And which essentially makes him healthy again.
Yeah. He always counts as healthy, but essentially, quote unquote, healthy.
Yeah, he's got
Yeah, so he will come back with health equal to
How much power you have?
how much power he had when he died.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have a
Yeah.
10 power Hulk, he comes back with 5 damage on him.
Right.
So if
And
you patch
then-
him up for 4,
Right.
and then he ticks for 1 at the end of the turn, you have a healthy Hulk again. Because he'll have 5 damage on him. You
Right.
patch him for 4, he'll have 1, and then he heals 1 at the end of the turn,
Then removes the token. Yep.
and he'll remove the token.
Okay. So you've got to kind of deal with that mechanic of making sure that you can do enough damage to iHulk after you put the immortality token on him before he can gain it all back and basically undo all the work that you did. So how do you do that? What are some of the tools that you can use if the idea is, instead of ignoring iHulk, to try to take him off the board? What are successful strategies for that?
Well, so sometimes what I like to do is I'll put like I'll put some chip damage on him just to make it just to get him close to the point where he can possibly get 1 activation by something. So maybe I'll put, maybe I'll leave him on like 6 health or something, right? And then like that sort of you can sort of try to mess with your opponent because they're not going to want to, because if they activate Immortal Hulk and he's like got like 6 health left
Yeah,
and you
this
spend
is
down all your power,
right.
then he comes back with 6 health or
Right.
whatever.
And you're talking about before he's got his immortality token.
Yeah, before he gets immortality token. So it's kind of like you can kind of buffer it. Like if you can scare them into thinking, okay, maybe I don't want to spend any of my power, so I have a less meaningful Immortal Hulk activation than I would if I could just be like, okay, I'll spend all this power because I don't care about it. So sometimes that's a pretty good way to deal with that. And then you can also like wait until you're like monitor the board state enough to where you're like, okay, I know this round I can win if I can score X amount of points. Maybe this is the round where I need to set up to daze Immortal Hulk and just take his activation.
Because if he dazes before he activates, he still it acts like any other character. He still dazes.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then the immortality doesn't kick in until the next round.
Yep. So if you've won the game, then it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Now, with that being said, he's going to come back with no conditions on him, right? So, like,
Yes.
there's a difference there when you're trying to burn down OG Hulk, because those conditions are going to be stuck on his ass until he's dead.
Right.
Whereas he's going to come back, he's not going to be incinerated anymore. He's not going to be rooted.
Right.
I think, generally speaking, for iHulk, you just want to ignore him. I don't think you really put together a plan to kill him unless you have. So there's a couple ways that I would suggest killing him. One would be play a kaiju list yourself and try to make it so that you daze him in a round where you have prio the next round.
Yep.
And then you use your priority to remove him from the game before he can get patched up / green doored. Other than that, there's like some specific models that do okay into him as far as like denying him power. So ironically, iHulk himself, his spender,
Yep.
Gamma Burst doesn't give power for the damage dealt. So if you can daze him and not give him any power, he's going to come back with very few hit points, and a patch up's not going to get him to full. And it gives you like a way bigger window to just take him off the board.
Yeah.
Well, and I saw people at Squad Goals were running like Sucker.
Yeah, Sucker is a card you can use. Ultron.
So how would how would Sucker work for those who might not remember or might not be familiar with it?
Sorry, not Ultron, but Ghost Rider and CGR. But Sucker is if you have 2 characters within range 3 of an injured enemy character,
Oh, I guess you can't do it to Immortal Hulk, so it doesn't even matter.
Oh yeah,
those 2 characters can. Oh, that's true. Yeah,
'cause he's
Yeah,
never
can't even
injured.
do it to him.
he's not injured.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I was playing. I
It
was
works
playing
into Ultron, I guess.
Yeah.
who is a mini kaiju? We
Yeah.
might talk about him later, so that Sucker could come up. But
I was playing Immortal Hulk into Hulkbuster, and thematically enough, Hulkbuster was kind of a nightmare with his spender into Immortal Hulk because he doesn't get damage for it, or he doesn't get power for the damage for it. So Hulkbuster ended up being
People
really good.
underestimate Hulkbuster, man. Hulkbuster,
I agree.
he's pretty good.
Yeah,
Like 6 dice builder, that spender is like 3 power. It's really good.
yeah.
He's got hit and run.
Hulkbuster messed my world up that game. That's for sure.
problem with
So-
Hulkbuster is Hulk, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now-
Like why take Hulkbuster?
That's true. Okay. So if the plan is to either with Hulk or iHulk, if the plan is to ignore him, are there a set of crises in which that's just not really an option? So like if you get Gamma Researcher or something like that, I mean, are there circumstances where ignoring a Hulk or an iHulk just isn't an option, or is that something you can do regardless of what crisis selection you end up getting stuck on?
I mean, if you're playing a high Scor-y team with like ways to displace Hulk, and you could just save that displacement till after Hulk activates, then yeah, that's pretty much that's what you do, right? You just displace him off the point, then he's not scoring it, and then
I would say
you can't get back on.
Hulk's best best extract is probably hammers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Just because like he can pick up 2, and then like there's ways to pick up 2 hammers with Hulk. One of them is an eyes on the prize play.
Yep.
And another one is just take iHulk in Midnight Suns and use a bump. So Hulk with eyes on the prize, you set him up mid, play eyes on the prize, pick up the hammer, you double move to one of the sides, and you're within range 2. As long as there's not terrain in the middle, and you pick up the other hammer. It's a lot more difficult to ignore Hulk when he's got 9 dice builders. That makes that's a huge difference.
Well, and the other thing with Hulk on hammers too is
right. So
is he can also like use those hammers to go after who's holding your hammers, so then he can consolidate hammers onto himself, which gets way worse.
Yeah. So when I say ignore, obviously you don't completely. I mean, you're gonna throw stagger on him. You're gonna throw shock. You're gonna throw root. And you're going to be throwing him. You're still going to interact with him, but you're just not trying to do things that are necessarily doing damage to him.
Right. So when you're going after, if you're ignoring him, your goal is not necessarily to take him down. Your goal is to slow him down with conditions or throwing around. That's what when we're saying ignore him, that's what you're talking about. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
You're more. The word I would use is you're impacting his activations, right? If you're making him throw less dice, or it costs more power to like gamma leap, or that kind of thing. That's what the control would be, because like incinerate doesn't matter on him if you're not attacking him.
So let's ignore and more annoy.
Another strategy, because typically kaijus are size 4. I mean, they have size 3. Ultron with Age of Ultron could probably be considered a mini kaiju. He's size 3. Like Sentinel Prime size 5, he could probably be considered kaiju, just because he can do some stupid stuff. But generally speaking, size 4, taking characters that have a size 4 throw allows you to just have a size 4 throw online every round to throw them into their team.
Right.
And that's a way to do it. Because if they're taking a kaiju, at least one kaiju, maybe two, like if you can take out a character easily who's not the kaiju, like it reduces their options for scoring in the game.
Right.
And it forces them more into a strict attrition plan where I mean, at a certain point they might end up just having to table you because they might be so far behind on points.
Mhm.
Size 4 throws are really good, and when you have them every round, it's pretty annoying for the kaiju player. A savvy kaiju player will set up their models to like be backstopped or sidestepped or whatever against terrain, or maybe against a character who's not as important, or they'll like wedge them into one of your characters so that you can't throw them into theirs. But sometimes it's unavoidable, and the guys get thrown into their team, and it hurts the kaiju player for sure. Something to keep in mind.
Yeah, because you can also do stuff like backstop with like Kingpin, right? People will do that.
You could, or Rocket or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on our gamma irradiated kaiju before we move on to the Mad Titan?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
So Thanos. Um, how is Thanos's game plan? How does that compare to the Hulk's game plan?
Thanos is
Thanos
weird.
is-
Because with his combination of gems, but let's be realistic, there's only 2 combos that he plays with. It's tough to say whether you ignore him or control him, because control doesn't quite work as well if it's a mind space Thanos, because his space will put him back where you want him to go, and mind, he can pull you in closer or move you away so that way you can't do as much. Um, and the trying to just outright kill him. He's got reality for defense and dodge rolls, so that really helps him out. And then again, he's got space, so it's just a tough say one way or the other. Other than, he, just like any other kaiju out there, he's not immune to stagger. So just stagger his ass, and that helps.
We talked about Hulk, and I think to a certain extent, Hulk as more of a control piece, which I think is a little counterintuitive. When you see the big scary model, you just think that his primary focus is to punch your face in, which obviously he can do. But how what is what does Thanos want to do? What is his, if you're bringing Thanos for the most part, what is your game plan? What are you doing with Thanos to be successful?
Well, I think it depends on what your roster's trying to
Right.
do, because like you can always go you could always take like the Guardians route with Thanos, where you're going a little bit wider and trying to maximize death decrees,
Mhm.
or you're just using Thanos to like control other models and throw punches, right? Like in the case with like Red Skull,
Mhm.
that's your primary plan is to like move models and punch stuff.
Mhm. You're using him basically like a giant fishing rod.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he can still punch with Red Skull's leadership, kind of a half-assed reality gem. So you drop a reality gem because it's stacking those isn't very good. Sometimes you'll roll double skull, but typically it'd be a waste. It's still okay on defense, but I don't think it justifies taking it over time in that list. Because time is, or not time, Jesus, mind. Mind is just really good, and I think it's got a lot more value now that dimensional portals once a turn.
Mhm.
Um, that being said, I it was so important to flip Thanos before that nerf, because infinite dimensional portals was just so repressive. Now it's still good to flip them, just to take it away. It's still a really good superpower, but it's not as important. I think Thanos is kind of the trickiest because there can be times when you're going after Thanos and it just feels like you're beating your head against a wall. You can't like do any damage to him, and you just waste a lot of energy and effort to do it.
Is that with the combination of the Reality Stone and his damage reduction?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and if they're
just like blocking like
stacking things,
4, 5, it's just like can't get anything through.
well, yeah, especially if he's like in cover or is able to use like other leaderships that help him, like Tony's leadership with rerolls on defense or something like that, or even webs. Not that I see anybody do that anymore, but you could, I guess.
But I think Thanos is an interesting puzzle because he has Death's Decree.
Yeah,
So
this Grease so good.
if you go after his team, they're gonna come back super mad and be adding a lot of dice.
Right.
And it's gonna get real bloody. But if you don't go after his team, you have to go after him. If you go after him, sometimes that just doesn't pay off. So,
So is Thanos a model maybe more than the others, where your best course of action is basically just kind of try to go wider and outscore him?
personally, I feel like it's hardest. Thanos is the hardest kaiju to play against for me personally.
Yeah,
The same.
he's pretty hard.
It's like it just like depends on the gym loadout. I feel.
Yep.
Because yeah, like to throw every stagger slash activation model you can. It seems like just like prevent him from doing as much as possible. But with the gyms, mainly space, the stagger doesn't really matter as much.
It still sucks. Losing a punch
It
still
still
sucks.
sucks, but like okay, I stagger you and then I throw you and then you just port back. Great, that was all right.
Well, Thanos also reduces to 0.
Right.
And
Yeah.
anyone who's played against Bill knows that that is super annoying when you're like trying to throw him into a building or like do explosive damage to him or something like that. He will not take any of that damage.
Yeah.
So bring Namor.
Bring Namor. Yeah.
Yeah. You could do that. He does stagger, I guess, for what that's worth.
Okay, so those are kind of the three primary big bads that seem to be sort of left in the game. I mean, there's some other kind of on the perimeter we can kind of talk and think through those, but those are the three big ones. So if we're talking to webheads and we're trying to say, how do you deal with these? What kind of, on those models, what kind of would be some closing general thoughts in terms of how you should be looking at either building a roster to deal with them, or if you see them across the table, what you should be thinking for a game plan?
Well, usually I will, like, when I look at what models my opponent has, and then I'll look at how many points are on the board, how much possible scores on the board, because if there's a lot of score on the board, they're less likely to go like tall with like double kaijus. And so maybe you only have to deal with one of them, and then you could go, okay, you kind of got to figure out which one they're going to bring. But I mean, if they got a Hulk, you just like, okay, well, they bring Hulk here. What's my plan, right? So I would say look at Cat for sure. Like Bill's really good. If you're
Miles.
playing an affiliation that has She-Hulk, she's good into kaijus, but like she's not very good into anything else. So it's kind of weird.
I think you have the most to gain from going after Thanos. I think he's probably So if you're going into a list that's like a tall Thanos list with, say, I don't know, like Thanos CGR and Star-Lord, or Thanos CGR Corvus or something, Thanos Corvus Hulk, I think you have to go into one of the kaijus, right? You have to pick on one of those three models. I think you pick on Thanos just to take away Death's Decree and make it so that he can't leverage the injured Death's Decree against you to rubber band. Um,
Well, plus you can
and if
take
you're going into like a wider Thanos list, just killing those little models and having them come back and gain 4 dice from their attack on their attack is just really, really punishing. As
It's
a rubber band attack.
insane on Nebula. Like
Ugh.
insane on Nebula.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane on like Nebula, Zemo, anyone who has
Yeah.
full rerolls. Black Panther. Um, I think you're incentivized to take off Thanos just to counteract that Death's Decree rubber banding and the fact that he's worth 8 points. Like if you can take 8 points off the board, that's the biggest model in the game, tied with Dormammu. So like that's the biggest chunk of a person's squad that you can take off in a single kill. And he also has kind of low defenses. So if you can like drop an incinerate on him, he's got 8 health on his front, 9 on his back. If you can drop incinerates and just throw physical energy into him, like dice sometimes are gonna dice and he's gonna go down quick. Like
Yeah, he like I hate attacking him, but I'm also with you on that one. I feel as though Thanos is probably the best one to attack out of the three we had discussed. Because you're right, it's sometimes is like banging your head against the wall when you're trying to kill Thanos, but his defenses are low enough. If you can incinerate him, it can make a huge difference. And Root,
Mhm.
I have completely forgot about Root on him. That really hurts.
Yeah, it does.
yeah, he hates Root. Hates Root.
Yeah,
It affects
really does.
Dimensional Portal. It affects all the Death Decrees, and it affects the gems. So
Yeah, it's really good on him.
What do you think is
Hex is also really good on him too.
is is Helios sort of the obvious kaiju weapon just because you can drop a lot of dice on it or on a kaiju, or is that sort of too reductive?
Well, it depends, right? It depends on if you have a plan to keep Tony alive for when the time comes when they have Prio and it's like, oh, they're gonna Helios now.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's definitely something to think about.
it's a little ham-fisted. It's
Right.
fine, but it's like I was saying earlier. Like if you're stacking your anti-kaiju threats on the table, like Iron Fist and Black Cat. If you had Iron Fist, Black Cat, and Tony on the board, like that's kind of a conundrum for the kaiju player. Another problem with Helios, and this is coming from a kaiju player, is like if they put Tony on the board, I'm gonna kill his ass. And if they play him super cagey, I'll just kill somebody else, and then I'll have Prio next round, and I'm gonna take him off the board. And guess who had all the power to fund a Helios? The guy I just took off the board, right? Because he took all the power, he took all the damage and gained all the power, but he's not around anymore. So by the time they're
Yep.
able to actually Helios, they might not even have Tony, or just they might not even have enough power to Helios. And then you run into issues with if they're running any sort of defense against Helios, like any kind of bodyguard or sacrifice or something like that. I mean, Helios is great. Don't get me wrong, but it's not just like an ironclad answer to kaiju by any means.
It kind of sounds like one of the themes is you have to have there's not an answer that you have to have layers. You have to either have a crisis plan be able to mitigate it, or if you're going to take anti-kaiju characters, you take a couple of them so that you can give the kaiju a decision to make and have some options available. Any other just sort of general thoughts or other advice to be thinking about in trying to deal with either of any of these three particular sort of big bads?
If you're trying to burn them down, you could consider cards like Dark Rain and, you know, Convocation's Poldak. What is it? Kick 'em while they're down. That's pretty good because you can usually get 3 or 4 conditions on a kaiju, right? So like now you're re-rolling 4 dice. That's almost as good as, Poldak or Dark Rain, right?
Yeah, it's going to depend on your list, but kick 'em can definitely be impactful. Especially on kick 'em's kind of a weird card because if you use it on a quote unquote regular character, by the time usually conditions are applied with attacks, and those attacks have a tendency to deal damage. So by the time you get those conditions on them, like they might have like maybe 2 hit points left, and then you can like kick them and kind of get a little bit out of it. But against like a Hulk, right? He's gonna have those conditions the whole time he's around. So you're gonna get a ton of mileage out of kick him, and you'll have a bigger window to stack more conditions on him. And that's kind of it's dependent on your list too. Like some lists they don't give conditions. The characters just don't have them, but some give a lot. So it's something to consider if you're looking at your list and you do have a lot of characters who hand out conditions easily.
Okay, let's do this. There are 2, for lack of a better term, X kaijus that are still kind of floating around. Let's talk about those 2, and then let's save the mini kaijus for another episode because it feels like there's a lot of them.
I think there's 3. There's 3. I think Juggernaut is definitely a kaiju that's still
Okay.
around in the right list for sure.
Okay. So you feel like Juggernaut's enough of a menace to kind of be a step.
Yeah, I think we should talk about Juggernaut too.
Okay. So let's talk about maybe let's talk about Juggernaut, and then we'll kind of talk about the nerfed ones. We'll talk about Malekith and CGR.
And CGR.
And then let's put a pin in it there, and then we'll talk about the mini kaijus, for lack of a better term, at another time. So let's go Juggernaut, because if we're thinking about Juggernaut is still sort of in the kaiju category with the others, JP, why do you think he's in that category?
Well, he's a size 4, and he's just a bully. He's hard to deal with.
He's hard to displace.
Yeah, I mean he's size 4. He's a size 4 bully that does his thing, and he's 8/8 with damage reduction to 0. He's highly mobile. He's got an amazing Taxes card. He's in every Brotherhood roster, and Brotherhood's still a thing. People still play him. He's probably more relevant.
Helmet too.
Yeah, I think he's probably more relevant, generally speaking, than CGR and Malekith, just because like people aren't playing Malekith Leadership; they're playing Skull 3, and CGR doesn't get put on the table anymore.
Well, plus
he definitely doesn't get splashed.
Well, plus he's a lower. Yeah, plus
he's a lower threat.
So you don't pay as high attacks for him.
Yeah, and he's kind of got that weird Thanos conundrum. Damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. You can't ignore him, but he's going to do his thing. If you don't ignore him and you try to burn him down, I guess it's kind of akin to Hulk too. Like if you're committing to burning him down, you probably just want to kill him, because when you flip him, he gets a size 3 throw on his back. So he becomes
really good.
Like way more impactful than he already was. And he's almost, unless you're packing a ton of Mystic, he's just as difficult to kill on his backside as he is on his front. So,
okay.
I would say, generally speaking, Juggernaut, you probably just want to ignore.
Okay.
Unless you just have a super killy team and you just kill everything.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Juggernaut, he's really, I mean, because even if you try to stagger him, you can't, because he can remove stagger with his with his superpower.
Yeah, the only way to like reliably stagger Juggernaut would be to hit him with a Black Cat, because you can only do 1 damage with it, and then
Yeah, and then he won't have enough. You have
you'd
to
have to
hope
do
that
it
he
when he
does.
has like no power,
Or
and then
yeah,
he would gain 1 on his next turn, and then he wouldn't have enough to shove. It's tough. It's tough to like stagger him and have it actually stagger. You can do it, but it takes a very specific set of circumstances.
Let's take a step back because we've talked a lot about ignoring characters. So if you're ignoring your opponent's kaiju, what should you be doing? Should you be focusing on burning down the rest of their roster? Should you be focusing on scoring? I mean, if ignoring is knowing what you're not going to do, so what should you be doing when you're ignoring?
Depends on what your roster is, I think.
yeah.
Because like if you brought an attrition roster as well, then it's going to be a low scoring game probably. If they brought an attrition roster with like, it also depends. Like, are they bringing Avengers with a Hulk? Are they bringing Midnight Suns with an Eye Hulk?
Mhm.
Or are they bringing like a list that they're planning on running multiple kaijus and going 3 tall?
Okay.
There's definitely a difference.
Okay.
Like you can go 5 wide with a Hulk, you can go 5 wide with an Immortal Hulk. But if you're going 3 tall with just like double kaiju, trying to just be as tall as you can, that's a completely different list. So if you're bringing an attrition into their attrition and they just have 1 kaiju, that's at 1 game plan. If you're bringing attrition into a tall kaiju opponent, that's a different game plan. And then same for scenario, right? If you're bringing scenario into just a list with 1 kaiju or a list that wants to be 3 tall, you're probably just completely negating them, because I think that's kind of a like taking webs into like a 3 tall attrition list. I think is just kind of like the rock to tall attrition scissors. Like I don't think tall attrition can beat like a wide webs with 3 models. Like I just don't think it happens.
Just
They
because
just
Yeah.
score too quick.
Well, and they just pull all the extracts off of whoever's holding them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So any other thoughts on Juggernaut? Because it kind of sounds like the consensus on Jugs is just ignore him and focus on what you want to do and just do that.
Yeah, I mean there's
I would say you want to have. So the thing with Juggernaut is generally he's not going to be double punching you because it's way more efficient to move and
Right.
gain power and punch you with a larger dice pool than it
Right.
is to double punch you. So if you have ways to like make that punch a little less impactful, then like that's pretty good.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, like shield with like Eye in the Sky or like a lifesaver with Gwen or just like
Or
even just
again,
like bodyguards or whatever.
and stacking conditions again. Like some conditions are still really good against them. Like shock is
Root.
still good.
Root is ridiculous
Root.
against Juggernaut.
He hates root. I think he hates it just as much as Thanos does.
hmm,
Um,
So annoying.
and then again, Hex. He can't stand Hex, but again, that's very dependent on the roster itself because you can't just give out shock willy
Yeah.
nilly. I wish I could because if I just said pick a condition, I'd give shock almost every time.
Just play more Thor.
No, I'd
Okay.
rather just play Juggernaut at 5 threat than Thor.
Okay. So let's talk about the 2 X kaijus, Malekith and CGR. And I guess more it's kind of the thought process. What's left of those 2? Is there is there still a place for Malekith? Is Malekith still scary in the right in the right context? Is there still a place for CGR? Is CGR scary in the right context? Do you not see them as much because they're just not as much fun after being nerfed? Or are you not seeing them now because now they just suck?
I mean, they're definitely
I
not as
don't
good as they were.
Right.
I don't think Mal sucks. I think Mal is still can be relevant in like the super tall attrition teams to just bring him like to just have like a specific plan of when to bring him, right? So
So what would
I
that be?
I
So what would be a plan for post nerf Malekith that would be really effective for him?
I mean the whole like Mal, what is it? Mal either Ultron 2 or Red Skull 2 and a 3, right? Like Zemo or something in Cabal.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking
I mean
specifically in
that's
Researcher and Gamma, right? At 15.
yeah, something at 15, yeah.
So just
Like
just
I think that's still a good team.
just using him as a big furry winged beat stick.
Mhm.
Okay.
He can
Yeah.
still hit. He can still do mount things,
Okay.
just not as well.
How about CGR? He seems like he's gone from everywhere to invisible. So is that just an overreaction to the nerf, or is CGR really just kind of doesn't have a home anymore?
I don't know. I've only seen him in one roster, and he didn't even get put on the table, and it was a Guardians roster. So I just don't know if it was an overreaction or if it's true that he's just not worth it anymore and doesn't have a place. Uh,
Well,
I still
I
think the
mean,
verdict's out on that one.
JP's the only one that's played him after post nerf, right? I haven't put him on the table since he got nerfed.
Yeah, I didn't put him
I
on the
have no
table
idea.
for a long time. I brought him to Bug Eater, and I played him round 1, and it was the first time I'd played nerfed CGR, so it was like 5 months or whatever. Never used him before. I
What was
probably used him in the wrong scenario, and I squeaked out a win. It was round 1 of Bug Eater, because it ended up at 15, but we were on Sword. It was Sword Virus. So I took Star-Lord, Hulk, and CGR against
seems very
new.
ill.
It was against Shield. It was new Tony, Two Threat Widow, uh, Human Torch, Hawkeye, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Who was his other? Oh, War Machine. Yeah, and like CGR still slaps, but he's not good on pay to flips. It was probably it was definitely a mistake. That was a super close game. It was a good game, but I definitely felt like CGR was detrimental, and I think I would have probably felt the same way with the old CGR, to be honest.
So is that just because of the pay to flip?
He just can't
Yeah,
interact. Like
you can't
Right.
interact. Yeah,
he came in hot on my Hulk and like just spiked some crazy dice. Um, with like Tony, he did something. He did something crazy, like 8 or 9 damage or something in one attack into my Hulk. And I recalled it, and he like rolled just like an insane amount again. And he brought that what is it? That Human Torch card with the energy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he
A new age.
Yeah, and he was able to just like pile a ton of damage on my Hulk, like by round 2. Like the end of round 2, my Hulk had like single digit health, like low. I want to say like he had like I don't remember exactly. I want to say like around 15 damage or something.
Ugh.
It was pretty disgusting. If he takes Hulk off, if he had taken Hulk off round 2, like I basically ought to lose that game because Star Lord's the only
Yeah.
person who can flip sword points.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not to take away from CGR because he still slaps, but he just wasn't good there. I played him later that day, and I played him against Kenny in the finals. I played the same team. I played Hulk, CGR, and Star Lord, but obviously it was into a different scenario. It was it Demon? No, it was Demons and Researcher. So super low scoring game. Didn't need to pick up extracts, so Ghost Rider doesn't give a fuck, and I didn't need to pay to flip. So again, Ghost Rider doesn't really give a fuck. And I played against what did he bring? Sentinel Prime, Sentinel MK4, and Hulk. So and Ghost Rider just like did a lot of work. And I played him at the shop too. I was bringing leading up to Bug Eater. I was bringing Guardians just to test him out, and no. Bug Eater was the first time I put CJ on the board. After Bug Eater, I was bringing him to the. I was bringing Guardians to the shop and I put Ghost Rider on the table a couple times. He hits. He's not doing a spender as often. It's very noticeable. Usually, you could do a spender a lot more. So you're kind of relying on that gainer. But that gainer, it hits hard.
Yeah.
6 dice counting skulls with 2 rerolls with a winging it, like it's still legit. He's just not as good. But before he was just dumb, so. And lately I've been bringing Malekith and Midnight Suns, and he still slaps. 7 dice critting skulls is like probably that's still got to be the best attack in the game, right? Even though it lost Pierce, like what's better than that? As a gainer,
Yeah, there's
or
not
as a
much.
builder gainer,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any attack that's better than 7 dice energy counting or critting skulls. That's just insane. With the right rolls, he just like steamrolls everybody. And he's still got a good leadership. His leadership's great.
Yeah, it is. It is good.
I put the Midnight Suns roster I have can flex into a Cabal team, so I put him on the board with Red Skull 2 and something else, and used Malekith's leadership, and Malekith's leadership's still really freaking good.
Yep. And Cabal has a good, Dark Reign's really good.
Dark Man's great. If you absolutely, positively have to kill every last motherfucker in the room, except no substitutes.
Yeah.
Plus, you have like a million characters to choose from to play in affiliation. Okay, any kind of last thoughts about the big boy kaijus before we kind of call this one a wrap for this episode?
Just have a plan going into them. Don't just don't what would Ron Swanson say? Don't half-ass
Don't
two things,
half-ass anything, whole-ass everything.
whole-ass one thing. I think that's what he
Yeah.
says.
Okay,
Which is
that makes total sense.
Against Malekith, if you have him in your meta, I think Recalibration Matrix is good into him as a one-off, like a one-shot card.
Yeah.
Just the fact that if he has like a really good roll with a bunch of skulls critting and stuff, like you just recall that, and then he has to re-roll the skulls, and the new roll doesn't count any skulls, so it can really kind of take the bite off, take the bite out of one of his attacks.
and he loses the power that he spent too.
Yeah, and also fallback. It prevents kaijus. It can prevent kaijus from like double tapping somebody. Basically, the basic kaiju game plan is to daze one of your models before you can activate them.
Right.
And then once you have injured models, the kaiju player is gonna KO your models before they can activate. So if you can fall back from a first attack that didn't kill, it's pretty impactful. It kind of throws a wrench in the plan.
Yeah.
I have also been digging Shang-Chi for like that kind of stuff. Cause I murdered Brian's Thanos with Shang-Chi because I like charged Builder and then Spendered him and just picked him up. I had to force with his tactics card, but it still got the damage through that I needed to.
Yeah, but a lot of people can say that if they roll 6 hits and then get recaled to roll 6 hits again.
That's true.
I was just gonna chip in there, Alex, but you beat me to it. A 10 dice Mystic Spender on Shang-Chi is definitely nothing to balk at. But also, Thanos has 4 Mystic Defense with Reality Gem and damage reduction.
Yeah.
And it's
He
like
didn't have reality in that game.
He didn't have reality.
he didn't.
In our,
Was he using
no, he
mine?
was,
Okay,
he was using
It was
mine.
the Cabal Thanos.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, Space Mind.
Okay, so we've got the X kaijus. How do we deal with them? If you've got Malekith, if you've got CGR on the board, we've got some general stuff that we've talked about in terms of how to deal with kaijus. For these two specifically, what are some strategies to help deal with them?
So my thought process with both CGR and Mal, they both hate conditions just like all the other kaijus do. Mal is the exception with Hex. You can't hex him, and I don't think you can incinerate CGR.
You can't hex,
Uh,
incinerate, poison,
and
or
Bleed?
bleed him. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, so CGR is a little
Stagger and
tougher
shock.
when it comes to him, but it's like shock, brute, and stagger. Definitely, he hates those.
I sense a theme with that. Maybe it's just everybody should bring Dynamo.
Bring Dynamo, Pyro, and Professor X with his root.
So I totally agree with you, Alex. However, CGR is affiliated with Guardians, and that's probably where you'll see him the most now. And they have Crew of the Milano.
Agreed.
Will
Yeah.
knock it off, and he won't be able to be affected by condition or have conditions added to him that round either. So it makes it a little trickier for sure.
Mhm.
I think the best condition for CZR is probably stun.
Yeah. Stun is
Just
real
because
good
he
on him.
gets the 5 dice roll to generate power. It can really kind of fuck with him. And shock is still really good, obviously, and he's kind of immune to everything else. I mean stagger, obviously, but
And then how about with Malekith? Is the counter to Malekith basically just punch him in his big furry face?
you kick him in the pussy.
There you go.
Yeah. If you can slow him and throw him, that's pretty good. But like most of the time your displacement's not gonna be great. I mean, it's forcing us to burn power is good, but it's not always the most effective.
You deal with Mal by putting incinerate on him and then kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah. Especially now that he lost health. Did he lose health? He lost health on both sides, right?
He lost health on both sides. He used to be 18 health. He used to be 10-8. Now he's 9-7. So he's got 16 health. If you can throw an incinerate, he's throwing 3 dice in defense, and he doesn't have damage reduction, anything like that. Problem with if you ignore Malekith, he's just still gonna be doing a lot of damage. It's worth the investment to kill him because, unless he's rolling just insane crits and skulls and stuff, it's not super hard, especially if you stack. If you can throw an incinerate on him, it's got 3 defense dice, and he can crit skulls. It's not amazing. It's fine. It's good, but it's not anything that's going to keep him in the game for an extended period of time. If you choose to ignore Mal, he's still going to tear you open. And the way that his kit works is that, yes, he spends power to crit his skulls, but for every power he spends, he's essentially getting back because it's on a builder, typically. Because he's not usually spending that often. So he can kind of daisy chain the power for his attacks into next attacks. So he's definitely worth. He's out of all these kaijus, he's definitely the one where you have the most incentive to kill him. Obviously, like shock, stagger, root are all really good on him as well, and bleed too. With like his reduced health pool, bleed is pretty impactful. He's got 16 health.
Yep.
If you can throw a bleed on him like round 1 or 2, like that's 4 or 5 damage. Like that's a big percentage of his health pool just for one condition. Obviously, you can't stun him or hex him, so that's kind of
you can't do that. Yep.
It is what it is. Poison's just a fucking joke of a condition, so it's whatever. But
Red sad.
If you have attacks that your opponent doesn't get to count their crits or explode them, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because doesn't somebody recently get that on there or something? I mean, I know Ancient Ones had it on their spender forever, but like I thought somebody that just came out or somebody that's
it
coming
was
out.
Kitty Pride, right? Is that what you're thinking of?
Maybe it's Kitty Pride. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe there was something else I was thinking about.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Shadowcat is, but like anything like that where they don't get to explode their crits is pretty good.
So like playing Malekith lately, from just like a personal standpoint, like it's definitely it's like anxiety inducing playing him a little bit because he's just kind of fragile for being 7th threat, only having 16 health. Especially if your opponent like gets an incinerate on him or something, it just feels really, I don't want to say bad, but you have to really play him carefully, or you can lose 7th threat and just kind of be at a major disadvantage. Like losing 7th threat is
that's big.
Pretty freaking impactful. It's like probably
especially if it
40% of your team.
It's like playing
especially if it can happen early. Like if somebody can get him on like into round 3 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think you burn Malekith if you can. I think most teams can. Even like someone like Webs, like with an all webbed up, you can definitely burn Malekith down. It's definitely a consideration to say like, do I want to burn him down on the front or back? I'd say typically you'd probably want to, if you're gonna just go in hard, probably on the back, just to get him off the board, and he can't benefit from the power he just gained. But sometimes life doesn't work like that, and you have to do it on this front. Especially if they're like holding his activation, and you can burn him down and like deny him an activation for a round. That's like David was saying earlier about iHulk. That's pretty impactful to do on a 7th threat.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with CGR. CGR, he's weird because if you're trying to not have him be psychotic, you might choose to ignore him because his hit itself is gated by the way he gains power. So he's only gaining 1 power off each attack, and then he gets random power for the 5 dice, and then he gets a power for the turn. So he can't really do a ton with his kit and stay psycho, or reliably stay psycho if you're ignoring him. Because he's not gaining power outside of the mechanics on his card. If you don't really care about him being psycho, or you want him to be psycho, you could attack into him and gain him or give him additional power so that he's guaranteed to stay in the psychosis. Sometimes that can be important, especially on like if your opponent is dumb enough like me to take him on like a pay to flip or something.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of goes back to like that Juggernaut Thanos conundrum a little bit with CGR. It just kind of depends on what you don't want him to do. And sometimes he's just going to do it anyway. Like if you don't want him to be in psychosis and he just still rolls like 4 or 5 successes on his roll, then he's just going to be psychosis. But He's kind of hard to kill. You can't hex, you can't incinerate. He's got 9-7, 9-7 health, 16 health. He counts skulls always. So like Malekith has a higher ceiling for defense, but CGR doesn't have to pay for it. Like if Malekith doesn't have power, he can't crit the skulls.
Right.
But CGR always counts skulls. So something to consider. Like if you are trying to dump CGR and like it's just not working, it might kind of bite you in the ass because you're putting a lot of energy into trying to kill a guy who's got a lot of health and counting skulls on defense.
Yeah.
I think stunning is probably the best condition for him, and shock is pretty annoying for him.
Yeah, it's super annoying.
Just because especially now that his spender got nerfed, like you might pull it off like once a round. And another thing with his spender costing 8 now is that like his kit doesn't allow him to recuperate more power. Like if he had a builder, like yeah, you could spend 8 and then build into somebody and gain like 3 or whatever, and then you would still be psychotic the next round. But spending 8 to spender puts him at maximum 2 power. Maybe he gets another shot with his gainer. He goes up to 3 power. They might drop psychosis if they only roll 1 in their dice roll, and they were at and if they were at 10 power. If they're at 8 power, you know they go to 0, then they gain 1, and then they'd have to gain 4 on the roll. So the spender is just not happening nearly as often. So yeah, I don't know how that actually works as far as giving him power. Like I don't know if a CGR player is going to use that to spender more, knowing that they might not come back psychotic. It's hard to say. And giving him power also, like he can't pull a million people anymore like Gwen. He's limited to once a turn. So I don't know.
Also makes him also value that his place a little more too, because like now that the spender costs more, it's harder to place him into somewhere and be able to spender.
Yeah, you have to have like max power, and even if you do, like I was saying, like if you're spending power to place and then spender, even if you have like 9 or 10 power, you're going down to 0 or 1. So the chances of you coming back psychotic are greatly diminished.
So is this all basically arguments as to good reasons to ignore him?
Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe.
I think ignoring him isn't a bad idea. Especially if you have shock. Like shocking Ghost Rider. Like throwing 5 dice counting skulls is okay, but it's not what Ghost Rider needs to be doing to make up his threat value.
The other thing too about ignoring him too is if he's got psychosis, he can't score. So like if you're a scoring team, you don't even have to worry about dealing with him, right? Because you're like, okay, well, he's not scoring anything. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's another thing with Ghost Rider, right? They're never going to have an activation when he's psychotic where he runs up, like double taps somebody, dazes them, and picks up their extract.
True.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. There's like that swinging pendulum of scenario mixed in with attrition usually. Like an attrition team will use their attrition to leverage scenario, but Ghost Rider just can't do that. Aside from denying his opponent's points, but he can't actually take points himself.
Okay, so that's some real good. That's a lot of real good information for players to think about for either the current kaijus, if we're going to count Juggernaut in with the current big boy kaijus, as well as sort of the 2X kaijus. So we'll be doing more of these. We're gonna have more of these how to deal with segments. We talked about a couple of options, but webheads, we want to hear from you in terms of what you'd like to hear next. What do you need help dealing with? What can we help you with? Is it mini kaijus like Red Skull 2 and Ultron Master Tyrant and things like that? Is it webs? Is it scoring teams? Is it other attrition teams? Tell us what we can do to help you. That's what we're here for. You can let us know at on all the socials at Witty Bantercast. You can let us know by email at wittybantercast@gmail.com. And of course, we'd love to have you come and support us at patreon.com/wittybantercast. So not only can you help us keep the lights on, but you can get giveaway entries, you can get primary dojoing, you can get questions answered, you can get a whole bunch of different benefits. So congratulations to our giveaway winner. We will be back in 2 weeks, and until next time, webheads, be good.